Hello, and welcome to the Argyle CIO Leadership Forum. My name is Vicki Lynn Brunskill, and I'm with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. I have some important information to share with you, and then I will turn the floor over to our esteemed opening thought leadership speaker. First, we'd like to take a moment to thank today's sponsors, Pitney Bowes, Quick, and SAP. Our sponsors are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience today. At any time during the event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, and those do include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. We also welcome you to stay socially connected during the event. For those of you who are active on social media, please use the hashtag Argyle Digital and follow us at Argyle Exec Forum, and be sure to follow Argyle on LinkedIn for special announcements. I'd like to take a moment to touch on our content neutrality policy, which we've curated based on the feedback we've received over the years from our members. We've worked closely with today's speaking faculty to ensure that you receive a set of balanced and neutral viewpoints, and we appreciate our members' support of this policy. Finally, and most importantly, we want to hear from you. So during each session, we encourage you to submit your questions and comments in the Q&A box. Thank you again for joining us. Now let's get started. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Colin Dover, Senior Director, SAP Business Technology Platform Center of Excellence at SAP. We are so excited to have Colin with us for his opening thought leadership presentation titled Unlocking the Power of AI, Integrating Data Management for Enhanced Enterprise Strategies. Welcome, Colin. Over to you.
Nick, thank you very much for the introduction, and good afternoon, good morning to everybody online today, wherever you may be. And thank you for joining me for the next 30 minutes here, as I do indeed talk about unlocking the power of AI, which not easy to do necessarily, certainly very easy to say. And this presentation could have a working undertitle of there's no such thing as bad AI, there's just bad data behind it. And so the conversation really is about enhancing existing enterprise data strategies wherever and however they exist within your organizations, however much time and effort has gone into them over the years. No doubt that has helped with the pursuit of information, the support of outcomes, and the understanding of how you do more better with time and effort. And so today is really about ensuring that the emergence of AI, as we've seen over the last 2 years, thereabouts, certainly in its generative form, doesn't distract us from the underpinning task of making sure our data is up to the job. So that's really the theme for the day. As Nick introduced me there, as part of the Business Technology Platform Center of Excellence, I spend most of my time with CIOs, CDOs, CDAOs, and now chief AI officers increasingly, as that becomes a title that takes hold in many organizations and various industries. And one of the things that comes up more often than not in conversation is this desire to future-proof the organization, ready it for the adoption of AI, but ensure that the future shock potential of evolving AI. We obviously, right now, we have generative, and we have a good history of specific narrow function AI, machine learning, and deep learning capabilities throughout many organizations. But as we start to see the move towards and talk of general artificial intelligence and the implications of that long term, there really is a thought of the future is where we'll spend the rest of our lives. It's time to start thinking about it now, and it's never too late, and certainly never too early, to consider what the preparations need to be in order to make sure the best data is available for the best information and data landscape within your organization. And so I really like this quote from Nicholas Rescher. Don't spend a lot of time weaving philosophy into data discussions, but this is an opportunity to say that we do have a great future ahead of us in terms of building out existing technology capabilities, supplementing and supporting what is already done in many businesses today with data in a very rich and meaningful way. And as we look to the future, we want more and more AI doing more and more of the mundane things potentially, but also helping us differentiate at the edges where there's potential interest and excitement to do things we've never done before. So that's the promise of AI in many ways. And just picking up on one analyst, McKinsey, certainly over the years have been very credible and fairly prescient in their forecasts of where markets are going to go and what the impacts of technologies will be. And I think this is an interesting selection of numbers here, and others are available. All of the analyst firms right now are doing an awful lot of work in trying to assess the real opportunity, the real financial impact and economic impact of AI, as opposed to simply the amount of effort that organizations are spending in what could be, if done in the wrong way or suboptimally, a waste of time, potentially a waste of effort, and indeed money. And so, this is I think where we're all looking at the moment. So 73% of CEOs across various regions surveyed earlier this year felt that AI presents or represents a significant opportunity to drive differentiation and growth. 69% of enterprises see the potential for disruption. And I think that speaks to the point I just made about the potential distractive value of AI. Certainly a lot of customers that I've spoken to over the last few months are concerned about that. That doesn't diminish, though, the promise of value overall. And so, it's a thing to be conscious of, aware of in the background, but isn't a reason not to explore AI. And then 80% of the Fortune 500 are discussing AI in their earning calls. That was as of last year. So this year, we know that many more have been. And I think the other Fortune 500 related number that I've seen recently is that maybe 75% of the existing Fortune 500 won't actually be in the Fortune 500 by 2027. And that's partly because of a failure, an expected failure for those organizations to adopt, adapt, and embrace, in a way that is beneficial, AI, whether it's as we see it today or as it evolves over the coming years and obviously becomes a lot more intelligent. I'm not going to get into the relative intelligence discussion of AI. Is it smarter than a high schooler? Is it smarter than a third grader? Or where is it? Can it pass the bar right now? The fact is, the generative wave that we've been seeing over the last 2 years is very much a reflection of its capability to make good guesses and draw upon strong correlations and relationships in language, in data, but it isn't necessarily thinking in the way I would expect certainly my high school age children to be doing in terms of solving problems. It's very good at retrieval. It's very good at, as I say, drawing those associations, but we're not actively thinking. So challenges in AI adoption, I kind of surfaced a few of the broad strokes there on the previous slide. But when we talk about the data landscape, excuse me, the implication of that is that we obviously need to keep the lights on, as we've always had to do. We have to address where there's value in existing, I say legacy systems. I like to call them heritage systems more often than not, because these are systems that over time, whether it's 10, 20, 30 years. I was with a customer last week in Toronto who had one system that is 40 years old, and it exists amongst many others that are considered of high value. It itself performs an incredibly valuable role in that data landscape. And so, there's the risk of the baby in the bathwater here in the face of the desire to adopt AI rapidly. And we need to make sure that we have a good sense of where the value in existing sources is. Scaling AI with business data is also a challenge, because the reality in many companies is that information exists in silos, functional areas, lines of business do rely very much upon their application and business specific data. It's often contextual to their view of the world and isn't necessarily coming from adjacent functional areas. And so, information tunneling is a real problem. Siloing of data is also an underlying and underpinning issue. And so to scale AI effectively, given that the quality of AI is really about the data that goes into it, and it's in many ways an accelerated version of the good old fashioned rubbish or garbage in, garbage out problem. We need to think about that from the very first steps that we take in adoption of AI. And then the concerns of large language models, we've obviously seen many high profile, some a little more disturbing than others. Stories over the last couple of years of where the LLMs are hallucinating as such. And those hallucinations, for the most part, really do come down to data quality issues, and the data that is obviously feeding and training the models. And so more than I would say at any point in my nearly 30-year time in this industry, I'm seeing an awful lot of organizations really focusing on data quality, on the need for the most robust governance that there has ever been in the way that data is used, and that data potentially is going to feed their AI activities. And so when we talk about a data strategy, and the title for this was all about the integration and data management for an enhanced enterprise strategy around data, it's worth just taking a step back and thinking about what data strategies have meant to this point in time. And in my experience, and this is not being overly cynical, I don't think, but fairly reflective of a lot of conversations and a lot of workshops that I've been part of and have facilitated, when we start the conversation around what is the existing data strategy in business X, Y, or Z, it often comes down to this. It's an architectural view of the world. It's a system-based representation that reflects process, undoubtedly, and operational activities, but it isn't necessarily a strategy in itself. It is more the result of selections driven many times by innovation cycles in the industry, by vendor innovations in roadmaps, and by a specific need at a point in time for the business. Now, clearly, a data strategy should be something far broader than that. I would say far more abstract in its nature and reflective of the outcomes that as a business you want to support, drive, and deliver upon. And so if the strategy conversation sounds like an architectural discussion and a systemic discussion, then it's probably not a strategy. It's more of the result of those pressures, considerations, or realities that I just outlined. So, another good quote. Peter Drucker was absolutely full of them, and many of them have stood the test of time very well, and I would say are more relevant now than they maybe even were at the time he coined them. And so the greatest danger in times of turbulence, and no doubt the last 4 to 5 years have been turbulent for all of us, is to act with yesterday's logic. And as much as I say it's worth considering the value of legacy and heritage data systems, it is important, in fact critically so, to think about the legacy of the way that business has been run versus the innovation that you want to drive. And so if we're working on last century's principles of data management and the way that we support the business in its outcomes, then we probably need to think about how we bring things forward to 2024, and we need to think about how, more importantly, back to the first quote, we move towards the mid-century. At that point, we're looking at maybe 60 to 70 years of legacy in some systems. Now, that's not to say the data in those systems is irrelevant. I spent a lot of time with aerospace and defense customers, and they, especially in the fixed wing sector, do retain data that reaches back into the 1930s in some cases and is as relevant today in component testing and reporting as it was then, maybe more so than when it was actually generated. And so, this is an important process to go through. Place the valuation on the data that you need to support the goals that you want to achieve. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, the 75% of the 500 won't exist. Sorry, it was the S&P 500, not the Fortune 500. But I think the principle here is the same, that a failure to adapt, stay competitive, remain relevant, and be the apex predator within your relative and respective industries is the challenge and the need. So I just wanted to share with you a couple of numbers that came out of some collaboration I did with a white paper earlier this year with what was the Data Warehousing Institute. Historically, they've relabeled and rebranded as TDWI now only, which is treating data with integrity. And as part of a 600 organization survey in North America, the questions were asked that really identified the issues and the gaps that existed within their data strategy. And so in this case, this was about data quality. Did users across different functional areas from executive levels downwards feel that there was a quality strategy in place as part of a broader umbrella data strategy? And you see the numbers here. No, my company does not have a data quality strategy. What we found is that didn't necessarily mean there wasn't one. It just meant that they didn't know about it. And that reveals a couple of problems in itself, that there's a lack of communication and a sharing of the imperative to have quality data to support critical decisions and initiatives in the business. And so not having one is almost as bad as not telling anyone that there is one. In this case, how important is AI as an enabler? We were looking forward to potential impact organizationally and impact on existing IT projects. And in this particular set of responses, you see that, yeah, absolutely, AI is very important or somewhat important. We're just not sure how yet. And then you see the distribution of other responses there too. It's unimportant, it's not applicable, we don't know. Well, those organizations, I'm sure, by spring of next year, will probably all be in the somewhat important to very important group there. Certainly, and anecdotally, we have heard a change in tone and a change in the level of interest associated with AI initiatives or the potential value just in the last few months amongst our own customers. And so, it's something that I think will be inevitably embraced and infused through most organizations. So this was really just to say that between those two groups, there's over 73% represented. Now, when we ask what they want to do with AI, it's in many ways the familiar responses that you could have seen at any point related to any other innovation in the last couple of decades. We want to increase operational efficiency or improve data-driven decision-making or enhance the customer experience. Or in the second group here, we want to accelerate innovation from innovation. We want to increase revenues or enable greater agility and adaptability. And that really speaks to those tumultuous times and turbulent times that we've seen over the last several years, with the expectation that we'll continue to exist in this new abnormal that we've all kind of just sort of moved into since the pandemic. So data strategy that allows for embracing of AI, the valuable, I would say, application of AI in the most effective way without breaking things that aren't currently broken, whether those are strategic, whether they're tactical, whether they're implicit or they're explicit activities within your organization, really has to be done with this framing of an overarching strategy. And so this is actually the high level methodology view of something that we employ with many of our SAP customers. It is basically focused on the outcome. It's not in bold here, but this is really the do not pass go moment for a lot of facilitated workshops, that you have to know what the highest value data is. More importantly, from a business standpoint, what the business outcome is that is desired and why it's desired. It can't be, well, this is the way we've always done things, or this is what we habitually have done with our data systems, or this is the way that we run our business, and this is an evolution of P&L type reporting spanning the last 100 years. It has to be something that is forward facing. It speaks to a 401k statement, top line objective, top line commitment to stakeholders, shareholders, and the market at large. It then has to reflect and point to impacts to the organization. Will there be a structural change or impact? Will governance be dragged along with sweeping changes or incremental changes in the way that governance is done today? And are the metrics and KPIs in place to measure whether or not the right things are being done in the right way, so that we know a year to two from now, we've met the outcome objective, we've moved the needle, we've turned the dial, we've done all of the good things that were the starting point and the impetus behind the initiative in the first place. So that is an absolutely critical exercise to go through in our mind. And the next thing that falls out of that is the operational strategy. So do we have the capabilities in place today? Operationally, what process requirements do these new outcomes create, or these refined and improved, enhanced outcomes? What functional requirements do they highlight that we have that we maybe have gaps around today, whether those are technical, operational, people related, or process related? And then what are the quality requirements? So starting to get into the data proper, what type of data to what quality that is assured quality is needed in order to support the outcome, and then what are the associated compliance requirements and the analytics capabilities. And then finally, in our third pillar, and this is in many ways, I don't want to say a rehashing, but it is an evolved version of the old 90s Big Five mantra of the three-legged people, process, technology stool. And so it really is about making sure that the technology is the result of the first two phases and the first two initiatives, and it isn't the starting point. We're not looking at architecture back to is this a strategy? No, it's an architectural diagram. Well, understanding what those capabilities gaps and maps look like in the face of new outcomes is obviously the driving feature here. And then that allows you to fill the gaps that you have. Security strategy is obviously, this isn't an exhaustive list, I should just point out, but that is increasingly one of the top of mind considerations. We're also looking at more and more third-party data. Just yesterday, I was having a conversation with a customer about productizing data, building a business data fabric, monetizing that productized data, and potentially offering it to an open data market. So, these are all additional considerations that maybe we didn't have to think about a decade ago. The AI conversation is highlighting them quickly, and it's highlighting far more than we've seen. So I mentioned that's a high-level view of the methodology, and I realize the time is moving on here, so I'm going to sort of speed up things a little bit as we go through this flow diagram. I hope that we share the slides with you after the session, but I will just point out this is, again, the methodological view of the way we engage with a customer, the offer that we make to sort of handhold through this exercise, or indeed to provide this as a methodology they can use on their own. But it highlights the critical path and the essential items to capture. The first being the as-is assessment. And obviously as-is very good at telling us what we're doing right or wrong today, the things that we want to take with us on any journey. It's not something to spend too much time on. No need for endless navel gazing. And I find often organizations are too ready to say, well, we're very immature in these areas, and just overall we're not doing things well. Well, the reality is everyone's doing an awful lot well. Would you label it as a best practice? Maybe not, but is it the starting point for what could become a best practice and a culturally valued practice that drives ongoing data quality and business improvements? And often the answer to that is yes, it is a baseline. So again, the baby in the bathwater concept comes in. We definitely don't want to throw everything out and assume we're starting from fresh. But it is important to know what your as-is looks like. We talk about this thing, the voice of the customer, and that really comes down in many ways to the tonality that you have relating to data. What we've seen over years gone by is different organizations, different industries have a different valuation and a way of talking about their own data and the way that it supports the way the business is run. And sometimes it's relatively low in that valuation. It's not seen as that important. A lot of people play with it. A lot of people are doing things with it that aren't necessarily It's not necessarily clear what the value is, and it becomes unrecognizable in its modified form from its source system. And so the opposite to that is ring-fenced, highly regulated, incredibly well governed, kept under lock and key, and only given to users who have a very clear description or definition of what they're trying to do with it. And so we try and capture what that cultural value is relative to data, and then what the potential organizational impact is going to be of doing things better. And then that sort of allows us to outline the next steps of strategy. So you've had plenty of time to look at this slide. You see it once we get beyond that sort of continual improvement cycle of understanding the business's needs, the current state, the way that feeds and influences roadmap and strategic imperatives and is ongoing. We then drop down into the execution phase. I think another Druckerism was strategy is commodity, execution is art form. And this is really where you get to the art form element. It's about that definition of the critical path, who's involved, why are they involved, how are they going to be measured in terms of execution, what are the impacts from the architectural standpoint, and then once we move into initiation, again, back to who's involved, why, what are they responsible, accountable, and involved in, what do the policies and governance processes need to look like, and then finally, we get to all of the nitty-gritty around policy standards, definitions, governance, quality, lineage, pedigree of the data, if you like, collectively, that is going to be managed and maintained on an ongoing basis. And that really is not necessarily the end point, but it is the result of the strategy, and it should be an ongoing, demonstrable result that then feeds back into the refinement of those business needs, current state, strategic imperative questions that then influence its evolving form over time. And that's the important thing, I think, to mention here. I've been involved with many governance programs over the years, and those governance programs are point-in-time exercises. They have a starting point, a duration, an end point, and as soon as they end, everything starts to go sideways, because governance is in reality never done, just in the form or just in the way that everything that forms part of this strategy shouldn't be considered a point-in-time exercise, a one and done effort. It should be ongoing, and it sort of becomes a cultural state of being, both within the IT organization, but most importantly, becomes a shared value amongst the business community that understand why they are pivotal in ensuring ongoing data quality governance and usability of the data, whether it's in AI or in any other traditional form. So that's a really important part here. Now, a few other sort of obvious and simple, in many ways, conceptual thoughts here. One is that the people process technology three-legged stool continues to be relevant. You could add data analytics, we could add AI in there, we could do as many facets, if you like, in our view of the world of what data strategy requires in terms of combined effort in order to be successful. I would just say, don't make it overly loaded with too many top-level objectives. We really want to make sure that we're keeping it simple for those that need a simple view of the strategy, and making it deeply granular for those that are going to be stakeholders and involved. And so that's the strategy piece. A little bit about AI in the way that we view it at SAP. I've mentioned that LLMs a couple of times. We are not in the business of building LLMs. We decided early on in that sort of innovation and hype cycle to continue to do the things we had already been doing for over a decade in terms of embedding, infusing AI, deep learning and machine learning capabilities into our entire portfolio. And we have, tens of examples in each of the portfolio components that are very clear examples of where deep learning and machine learning has been applied. Obviously, we didn't all wake up November 22 and suddenly discover AI. These have been evolving capabilities in most enterprise vendors' portfolios for a good while. We did, however, last year invest $6 billion in AI partnerships, some acquisitions, and rapidly accelerating an awful lot of what we were doing throughout the portfolio. So we have something called Joule, which is a co-pilot that spans the portfolio and allows you to have a very natural interaction with an incredibly complex underlying system or set of systems, and ask questions in a way that will give you generative answers and allow for the formation and the presentation of analytics from those answers at your request. So that's just one example of where we're doing an awful lot in the world of AI. Just in terms of the part of the portfolio I represent most commonly, we have this AI foundation capability, which is everything from a vector engine, knowledge graph. We're obviously doing the various RAG capabilities. We can hook into, through our generative AI hub, any existing generative AI tool set that you have in place or that you choose to adopt. And many companies are leveraging multiple LLMs, just as an example of that particular part of the AI pie. And we can reveal what's going on in those LLMs. As I say, we just decided it didn't make more sense for us to get into the LLM business. It made more sense for us to provide business context to AI capabilities in the broader context of enterprise data, as it has been over time and as it will continue to exist in most organizations going forward. So I'm aware that I'm at time. Nick hasn't given me the virtual hook here yet, but I just want to end on this, that the critical thing is a data strategy in its fully encompassing form will help with leveraging AI adoption, integrating that AI strategically into existing landscape and systems, and most importantly, help drive towards maybe new, unthought of, undiscovered, and newly uncovered outcomes as we move into the next year here in 2025. So thank you very much for your time. I've seen there are a few questions in the chat. I did try to cover them as they were coming up, and so hopefully you got a little bit of a sense there about what we're doing in the AI space. But I would definitely encourage you to visit us at our virtual booth, find out more about what we're doing, and hopefully I may get to meet some of you in person in the real world sometime soon. So thank you, and with that, back over to you.
Thank you so much, Colin, for that insightful presentation. I also want to thank everyone for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. And as a reminder, please do check out the prizes and raffle rules section to see how you can earn points for the chance to win one of several prizes. Our next session will begin at 11:35 a.m. Eastern Time, and that'll be a fireside chat titled Balancing AI Innovation and Safety. Please click the join button that will appear on your screen to be redirected to the session, and we look forward to seeing you there.